Solitude becomes necessary the moment you realize that clarity cannot survive in crowded environments. There comes a point where the noise of other people's fears, opinions, projections, and insecurities becomes a fog thick enough to suffocate your original thoughts. You begin losing the sound of your own inner voice because it gets drowned under the weight of borrowed expectations. Being alone strips all of that interference away. Silence becomes a purification chamber where the mind resets to its natural frequency. The absence of company is not emptiness. It is the first honest conversation you've had with yourself in years. And when the fog lifts, you finally see the path in front of you without inherited bias twisting its shape. This is why separation becomes essential. Without it, you can live an entire lifetime thinking other people's desires are your own. There's a moment in every person's journey where survival depends less on strength and more on withdrawal. Stepping away from the crowd isn't an act of exclusion, but an act of preservation. You retreat not because you dislike people, but because you finally understand the subtle danger of constant influence. Human beings are porous by design. Energy transfers through tone, posture, expression, and silence. Sit around fearful people long enough and you absorb their limitations. Surround yourself with lazy thinkers and your ambition softens. When you isolate yourself temporarily, you interrupt the transmission. You guard the psychological gate that determines your future. That pause allows you to filter out what was never yours. In that stillness, you build the foundation for a self not shaped by social gravity, but by deliberate construction. There is no mastery without isolation. Every craft that demands precision requires long stretches of uninterrupted focus, and focus thrives in solitude. Your brain's deep work capacity is fragile, easily hijacked by external chatter. When you remove yourself from the world's constant pull, your cognition sharpens. Ideas mature instead of dissolving into distraction. Patterns reveal themselves where noise once hid them. Alone, you become a weapon forged in concentration. The work that emerges from those silent hours carries an edge that cannot be replicated in shared spaces. Mastery has always belonged to those willing to sit in the quiet long enough for their inner architecture to rearrange itself into excellence. Spending time alone forces you to confront your truth without escape routes. When no one is around to validate your excuses, you become aware of the stories you tell yourself to avoid growth. Solitude acts as a mirror without distortion. You begin to see your habits, your weaknesses, your fears, and your potential with uncompromised clarity. That honesty might feel brutal, but it is the birthplace of transformation. You cannot change a self you refuse to see, and you cannot see yourself fully when you're always performing for an audience, spoken or unspoken. The quiet space you create becomes the arena where personal accountability is forged. Alone time reveals how much of your personality was constructed as camouflage. People often shape themselves to fit the expectations of their social circles, adapting their identity to avoid rejection or to gain approval. But when you step back, you discover which parts of you were authentic and which were survival tactics. That distinction is life-changing. It becomes the starting point for building a self not dependent on external perception. The layers you shed in solitude create room for a version of you that is aligned with your truth, not manufactured by your surroundings. That internal alignment is impossible to achieve without moments of intentional separation. Silence becomes a training ground for emotional stability. Without external distractions acting as temporary bandages for discomfort, you learn to face your emotions directly. You witness your own sadness, anger, insecurity, and longing without numbing them with company. This confrontation teaches emotional endurance. You stop running from yourself You stop needing others to regulate your state. The ability to self-stabilize becomes one of your greatest strengths. People who cannot sit alone with their thoughts are controlled by them. Those who can endure silence end up governing their entire internal landscape with calm authority. Your creativity demands solitude because imagination needs room to breathe. In isolation, the brain begins connecting ideas in ways impossible under constant stimulation. The mind wanders, explores, invents. Daydreaming, often dismissed as idle, becomes an explosive generator of innovation when nurtured alone. Many breakthroughs in history were born not from collaboration, but from a single mind roaming freely in silence. Solitude expands cognitive space, allowing original concepts to surface with purity rather than being tainted by other people's assumptions. When you are alone, you are not influenced. You are inspired. Spiritual growth unfolds in solitude because introspection requires distance from worldly distraction. Only when you remove yourself from the external circus do you begin hearing the subtle signals of your deeper self. Every ancient tradition understood this truth. Retreat leads to revelation. Silence unveils inner architecture. Being alone forces you to peel away the layers that modern life stacks on top of your essence. You reconnect with the primal instincts, the intuition, the moral compass, and the inner wisdom that gets drowned out by everyday chaos. That connection cannot be outsourced or borrowed. It must be experienced firsthand in the quiet space where your true nature emerges unfiltered. Choosing solitude over stimulation becomes an act of strength, not avoidance. You separate to cultivate qualities that the crowd cannot give you: discipline, vision, patience, resilience, self-trust. When you step away, you build the mental muscle required to walk paths others fear. You learn to operate without applause. You learn to progress without witnesses. You learn to validate yourself through action, not attention. This independence becomes the force that protects you from manipulation, distraction, and emotional instability. Distance creates dominance.